YouTube, and let me go ahead and start the recording. I'm going to record on my end,
Oh, I better record on mine too.
recording on this computer. And this is Male Entrepreneur Podcast. Where are we at here? Episode number 147. And we are live in 3, 2. All right. Welcome back to the Male Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, the male entrepreneur himself, Purdeep Sangha. Purdeep, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing phenomenal, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing slightly less than phenomenal, but pretty good, all things considered. And we're kind of working our way into the new year here, and just hoping it's going to be a better year than last year.
I think a lot of people are hoping that, man. So by the time this episode comes out, it'll already be New Year's. So happy New Year, everybody. I hope you guys have an amazing year coming up, and we get past this crap that we've been dealing with over this last 2020. But I'm sure we will. There's so much we can learn here, man. We could spend this entire season of 2021 talking about 2020 and all the lessons we learned. I'm sure.
Yeah, that's true. So, what do we got on this week's agenda for the podcast?
Well, I thought it would be appropriate to talk about strategy since we're going into a new year and people are talking about goal planning and setting their strategy for the upcoming year. So it's important to think about strategy and what goes into strategy, because I think there's so many misconceptions about strategy and what strategy really is and what strategy isn't. And some people overcomplicate strategy, and some people just don't focus on strategy enough, I think. So it's just a casual conversation I thought that we could just have about strategy and some of the pros and some cons and what to watch out for.
Okay, so there's a famous quote, and I'm going to butcher it, but something along the lines of no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. As soon as you actually hit the battlefield, all of your plans go out the window. I think Mike Tyson always said, or also said something like, everybody's got a strategy for the fight until they get punched in the mouth.
Yep.
How in my experience, it's always been kind of like that. We'll spend a lot of times picking out a strategy, and then as soon as that strategy meets the real world, a lot of it gets thrown out the window right away.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think that I've experienced that myself. And I think this is common in business. This is what happens. I think this is where people make the mistake of strategy. They think of strategy being, okay, this is a clear path to our target. First of all, you have to select a target, but this is our clear path. It's never clear and it never goes the way you want it to go. The whole purpose of strategy is to figure out what your target is in the first place and identify how you're going to be able to get over those obstacles that are going to come your way, but also stay focused. I think that's the most important thing, because a lot of times when we come up against these challenges, sometimes we lose track of where we're trying to go. We lose sight of our target. We lose sight of our vision and we get thrown off track. Look what happened in 2020. There were people that gave up right away that said, okay, this year's a write-off. And I'm like, how could you do this? Actually, I just got off with one of my clients prior to jumping on this podcast episode where, he just looked at his results and he said, wow, like he actually did better than a non-COVID year because we actually started working together. We put together his business goals. We put together a strategy. He stayed on track. He tracked his things he measured. And what he said was he was talking to his neighbor, the neighboring business, and his neighboring business said he lost, I think his revenues were under by 90,000 for the year. So that's a difference between having a strategy and not having a strategy. Is, sometimes you have to aim high and actually continue to move forward. But Nathan, what you were talking about is so true, is that it never goes the way you plan, the way you plan it. And I think the most important thing for strategy is setting up your organization so you can change fast. I think that is the new wave of the future, is that you have the right people on your team, you have the right systems and strategy in place so that when things don't go the way you want them to go, that you're able to change and switch it up.
So I had a kind of similar experience with some of my clients this year. Right away, I had two clients specifically because of the lockdown measures and the industries that they were in, both of them had really good strategies, business strategies. Both of them went under right away, like midway
Mhm.
through the year. They both businesses went under. I had another client who I was just on the phone with the other day, and this was their best year that they've ever had, and they've been in business for like 7 years now. And
Mhm.
we've been working together for the last 3 or 4 years, and this year was just amazing for them. And it might be because of the industry that they're in. I think that um, that probably played a role, but I wanted to get your take on that because obviously, I mean, I don't want to be like the Debbie Downer, but some people's businesses, the governments just came in and said you are not allowed to do business
Mhm.
whatsoever, and some people were kind of flexible and they said, okay, the old strategy is not going to work, but we can still make something out of this. And that's what the one client of mine that had their best year so far, that was one thing that they did was they just said, okay, well, now it's a new battlefield. We need a new battle plan.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think it all comes down to attitude. If we take a look at what business really is, and this is just it's a reminder for everybody to pay attention to. Business is simply this. It's creating a customer and keeping a customer. That's all it is. And if you can keep that at the forefront, you will continue to have a successful business. You may have to shut your existing business down and create a new one. But it all comes down to attitude. If you're a true entrepreneur, you're going to get through it. You're going to look for the opportunities. Remember that every time there is a downturn, we were taking a look at statistics just today. It looks like they're estimating about 16% of small businesses to shut down in January, possibly another 18 in February. So that's a significant amount of businesses that are going to be closed. We're talking about small businesses that are going to be closed down. For every business that closes down, you have to remember there's also opportunity as well. That we will get through this, that there is some opportunity for, and I hate to say it, you're not taking advantage of someone else's loss. You're taking advantage of an opportunity. That opportunity, someone is going to take advantage of it if you don't. It all comes down to attitude. And this is why strategy is important because we focus on two particular things in strategy. The first one is what industry or what niche are you going to play in? And how attractive is that industry? Because that's the first element you have to pay attention to. And if you're going to take a look at anything when it comes to strategy, because I know a lot of people overcomplicate strategy, especially larger businesses, they can just strategize the heck out of everything and it just becomes cumbersome. The first thing, though, to pay attention to is how attractive is the industry that you're in and the niche that you're in. The second is how are you going to get a competitive advantage? So the first element, we're talking about attractiveness. And this goes back to what you were saying, Nathan. Some industries are just not attractive to be in right now because of the COVID situation, because of the government shutdowns. You do not want to be a restaurant right now, right? A typical dine-in restaurant, you don't. You may want to be a takeout restaurant because I know there's a lot of takeout restaurants that are just killing it, and they're like, we might as well shut down the indoor dining like long term because we're getting way more takeout.
Uh-huh.
So the industry is important. I think this is a tough one to swallow though for guys, Nathan, because if we've spent a decade, maybe even 2 decades, or maybe it's been passed down by generations in the family in terms of this business, it's hard to close up shop and say we have to move on to something else.
Mhm. I think that, and kind of feel a little bit fortunate myself that I got into internet marketing as early on as I did, a lot earlier than most marketers did. And both of my businesses are almost exclusively marketed and ran through the internet. Um, Brick and mortar businesses, unless you're like a big box Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot, most brick and mortar businesses have had a hard time going through this last year. But I know that some of them have, again, they hit the battlefield. They had a plan for 2020. And some of them, as soon as all this stuff started happening, they said, okay, how do we start utilizing internet? And
Mhm.
one of my friends that runs the marketing for a local, smaller competitor to like Home Depot and those type of home improvement stores. That's been their main focus going into this year is updating their business to providing you go online, you buy your stuff online, and then you show up and they have it delivered straight to your car, or they've started focusing on home delivery. Um, what are some of the industries that you see? And it's hard to guess because we don't know what the future holds, but what are some of the industries that you would say are attractive to you, and what makes them attractive to you?
Well, just one, I'll give you an example. One of the things I was taking a look at is online shopping is important, because a lot of people are doing a lot of online shopping, but there is a big gap in in-person experience for brick and mortar. I don't think brick and mortar is out. I think people are just doing it the wrong way. For example, Toys R Us just shit the bed because they literally did not provide the experience that they should have. And I've talked about this in a previous episode. I love going to Toys R Us. And I would love it even more if they had better experience, if they actually had properly trained people, if they created a better experience when you went in there. I would take my kids there all the time. My kids and I, you know what we've substituted now for Toys R Us is Indigo, because it's just a better, friendlier environment, or chapters. And so it's a different environment for us because it's cleaner. The people are friendlier. It just got that feeling. So we take our kids to chapters now. So people coming out of this, I believe, out of this COVID, because we will get through. And I want people to understand that we will. We are social beings, and we will come back to that social aspect from an economical standpoint. If you take advantage of it, if you create the right experience, I think you will do well. And it's about creating an experience, something different. One of the things that just popped out of my head, Nathan, was I was thinking about, we do a lot of Amazon shopping, but one of the things is on Amazon, it still requires one day to get there, at least the next day. But what about those things that you need to get like today, like right now? And I think that there's a gap there. And it's almost like the corner store for those things that you need right now. um Whether I could just couldn't tell you, like, I'm just trying to think, if you made a list of those things that people need like the same day, you could probably open up an in-person store, because if you're in a populated area, people would probably go there and do it because they know they can't get, they need it right away. And if they order it online, it's still going to take a day. But if you're known as that place where you can get that thing that you need at that moment, then you'll still be able to run effectively. I think people just need to see the gap. So let me see if there's any other industries that are kind of popping up for me right now. I think talent management is an industry, because I know people are scrambling right now to figure out, okay, where do we find the right people, for example, that can deal with this new environment, because people working from home right now is tough for a lot of people. People don't know how to balance their lives at home. Uh, Another industry which is huge right now, Nathan, is coaching and consulting. Like, that is just blowing up. It's blowing off the doors because people are being able to make money from home, and they're realizing that they can utilize their talents to educate other people. I think education as a whole is going to change. I think there's a huge opportunity in education. Um,
I want to
yeah, yeah,
interject there right there.
yeah.
Um, Personally, I think that the educational model that we're still operating off of, it's one of those industries where I think it's long lived past its expiration date, and it's been kind of subsidized, and we've been dumping student loans into it, and it's refused to the traditional educational model has refused to adapt to the new technology.
Mhm.
And it's one of the few industries where I think what's going on right now is kind of pushing it to where it needed to already be going anyways. And as an online, a lot of my clients are info product creators. A lot of my clients are people that do coaching and personal development for people. Um, and they're the ones that I see them as the future of where education is going, we also have things like Khan Academy. I don't know if you're familiar with
Mhm.
them. There's a lot of like uh, online learning established things now that are starting to pop up. Uh, I want to get your thoughts on some of the industries that are probably going to come back stronger after this. That now that they're being forced to adapt the new technology, if all of this stuff would have happened in the 90s or the 80s, a lot of stuff would have just been wiped out. But I think there's industries that are actually going to be improved by having to adapt to what's going on. And I wanted to get your take on that.
Yeah, I think every industry is being impacted right now. So we're seeing this from all across the board. We can narrow it down and pinpoint it, but I'm seeing every industry from medical professionals to even, for example, chiropractics, where people weren't even, you would have to call in to book an appointment or so forth. They're going online now. You can book online appointments. So everybody is being forced into this new trend of convenience. What's happening is it's causing people to rethink how they do business and hopefully eliminate the waste in their business. And that's where technology comes in. I want to be very clear that the social aspect of business is still going to be there. I think that's what we need to understand. And even, for example, people talk about, and a lot of businesses right now are saying we're just gonna have at home employees, for example. We're not going to require people to come into work. I think that's a big mistake because it requires a certain type of person to be able to work at home. And Nathan, you and I do a lot of work at home, and I jokingly say I've been in lockdown for a while because I have a home office, but it requires a certain type of personality, and you still crave the social aspect. And I don't think everybody is built to work at home. I don't think it's functional. I don't think it's conducive. Like even right now, my kids are running around like crazy in the background, and I'm just trying to not yell at them. So it is I don't think that's going to be conducive to the workplace, for example. So I think businesses need to be understand that we will bounce back. So what businesses, going back to your original question, are being improved? Well, education is definitely one of them. We're seeing restaurants as well. They're having more better takeout services, for example. Um, and I think these are the things that we need to pay attention to, even non-traditional. One of my clients is a photographer, for example. He's changing his way of doing business so that he doesn't require people to come in to have to order stuff.
Mhm.
Right now, you can do it all from the convenience of your home. So everybody is being impacted. There's not one single industry that is not having to change now. Retailers are having to change, but here's what I do see as an opportunity. People are going to want to be extra social coming out of this. We're craving that social aspect in a safe environment. So whoever can create an environment like that, whether it's a shopping experience or a social experience, I think they're going to do well. That's my personal belief. Is we are human creatures. I don't think everybody's going to go online and become a hermit. I think if you're betting on that, I'd like to see more half the brick and mortar and half online, in terms of that approach. And what we call an omni approach is if you can blend the two experiences, online versus and brick and mortar, you're going to be successful. I don't think a lot of businesses are doing very well on that, though. I think they're still keeping the two the separate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So to kind of tie it all together, and I am 100% in agreement with you. Business is about relationships, and
Mhm.
that means relationships with your customers, relationships with your employees, relationships with the people you do business with. That's not going away, and relationships are a huge part of the human condition. So I definitely don't think that those are going away. But also, and you kind of alluded to this, a lot of what gives you that competitive advantage is getting rid of the waste, getting rid of the extra steps. And that is something that a lot of businesses are having to look at right now, where they could get away with not looking at it before. So I do think that this is kind of a sharpening of the swords type moment for a lot of businesses out there.
Yeah, and that what you just said is brilliant, because I think that ultimately sums it up from a strategy perspective is if you stay strong with your client relationships, you are going to get through this, and use your technology to enhance the relationships, not to replace the relationships. I think that is very important. So I think bang on. If you can be super successful by focusing on the relationships, use technology to support it and not replace. That's ultimately, I think, what it comes down to.
Nice. Okay, so before we're out of here, I know you just launched a new book, and if people want a new book for the new year, tell us a little bit about the book and where people can go to get it.
Yeah, cool. So I don't know if you can't see it, then you can go to completemanbook.com to actually see what the physical copy looks like. But I'm holding it up here for those of you watching YouTube and so forth. But you can go to completemanbook.com. It is called The Complete Man, and it's all about achieving ultimate performance, fulfillment, and victory in every area of your life. That's a subtitle. And it is about you can see the overall aspects of what it means to be a man, to live a successful life, and actually the practical guidance to get there. And so, what the way I've structured the book is that to talk about, you can say the philosophical aspects, but also the practical aspects. And each chapter has a summary page, which I'm hearing back from people, where people are finding that the most valuable because they're able to take the action steps and say, I can actually implement this into my life. So if you're a guy out there and you're wanting to perform better, you want to achieve more in your life, whether that's to have a better relationship, have a better business or career, just feel more fulfilled, this is the book that I've tried to bring that all together for you to be able to do from a practical perspective. Interesting enough, Nathan, just one more thing is that there's a ton of women reading this as well.
I'm
There's
not surprised. We got a lot of women listeners to the podcast too, which is strange because the male entrepreneur and the complete man, but yeah, we get our fair share of women as well.
Yeah. So guys, if your women are reading this, but you're not, you're a couple of steps behind. So get your copy, completemanbook.com.
Awesome. And if people want to check out more episodes of the podcast,
Yeah. Check out youtubeformen.com or mailpodcast.com.
all right, man. Until next time, we will catch you later.
Till next time.